Welcome to episode 33 of Motivating Mondays, a weekly podcast and YouTube series dedicated to help Canadian job developers and other employer engagement professionals develop the tools, resources, expertise, and network to excel in achieving sustainable employment outcomes for their clients or students. My name is Christian St. Cyr, National Director of the Canadian Job Development Network, and today we're going to take a closer look at the 2025 budget that the federal government of Canada just has released. While the feds are calling for $141 billion in new spending, they're also calling for $60 billion worth of cuts. How are these changes going to impact the employment services that are available, job search, and employers? Well, let's take a closer look. I'm often asked to define what labor market information is, and my common response is that every time something happens in the economy, there are human impacts that are created, and that is labor market information. When the government makes changes to legislation, laws, regulations, hiring, immigration, conservation, and dozens of other areas, the results cost some people jobs, creates new jobs for others, and often increases the skill set and sustainability of many other jobs. For instance, 1 year ago, in October 2024, Canada imposed a 100% tariff on all Chinese-made electric vehicles, EVs. In response, in March of this past year, China imposed a 100% tariff on canola oil and canola seed, two very different industries. Now, these actions have supported EV manufacturing in Canada, but they've also been devastating to canola oil producers, workers, and the supply chain that supports them. While we see provincial, federal, regional, county, municipal, and First Nations government announcements every day, when either the province or the federal government releases their budget for the year, it gives us a list of spending, cutting, and policy announcements that will help us better understand what we can expect in the next year. Many of these announcements will support employers, while others will cost them and tie their hands. Some will illuminate new areas of employment, program support, and areas of skill enhancement. This will also impact educators and trainers and government as it looks to augment education and our future demand. Now, 2 weeks ago, the federal government revealed their budget for the coming year, which outlines a wide range of new spending, cuts to existing spending, and a roadmap to deal with increased security, economic independence from the United States, and preparation for a declining economy. Now, today is the final confidence vote for enacting the budget, and as long as the Liberal government is successful, the budget has a number of announcements that will significantly impact our labor market. So, Budget 2025 calls for $141 billion in new spending commitments over the next 5 years on national defense, personal income tax relief, and infrastructure investments, among a number of other priority areas. These are partly offset by approximately $60 billion in planned expenditure cuts and a 10% reduction in the federal public service. They're looking to bring down the federal public service by about 40,000 positions over 3 years. The new budget introduces workforce and skills investments that are hoped to strengthen Canada's labor market resilience and hopes to support workers through economic transitions. This includes $75 billion over 3 years to expand the Union Training and Innovation Program, enhancing union-led apprenticeship training in Red Seal trades, and a $97 million Foreign Credential Recognition Action Fund intended to tackle workforce shortages, specifically in healthcare and construction. Through the labor market development agreements, the agreements that Service Canada, or the federal government, has with each of the provinces to provide employment services in those provinces. The federal government wants to provide $570 million extra over the next 3 years to help workers who've been affected by tariffs and global market shifts access training and employment supports to diversify their skill set. To pay for the new spending, the feds have said that they're going to cut the workforce of the federal government by 16,000 full-time equivalent positions over the next three fiscal years. This is part of a larger goal to reduce the federal government public service to 333,000 workers by the year 2029. That's about 40,000 fewer workers than the all-time high recorded in 2024. Now, job reductions have already been underway, and the federal bureaucracy, has shrunk by about 10,000 employees just since last year. Now, Prime Minister Carney, in announcing the budget, said that this sort of change is going to be possible by turning to new forms of technology such as AI to make workers more efficient. Critics, on the other hand, argue that this is either too short a time period to effectively make these changes, or that the government doesn't really have a great track record of incorporating new technologies such as what we saw in the Phoenix pay system. Already, the federal government is overwhelmed with demands being placed on them. The Canada Revenue Agency will experience a $4.1 billion cut according to this plan, and yet there's been recent reports that suggest less than 15% of callers to the CRA hotline are actually able to speak with a person. Quite often they're cut off completely or just get a message that nobody is available to assist them. So while there is more than $140 billion in new spending, multiple federal agencies are going to undergo major cuts. Employment and Social Development Canada, which runs Service Canada, will be cut by $2.4 billion over the next 4 years. Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship is going to be cut by $2.06 billion. Indigenous Services cut by $1.98 billion. And National Defense by $1.92 billion, while Canada is simultaneously trying to expand our military and meet our NATO spending targets. So, Employment and Social Development Canada says that they're going to approach this by reducing its property portfolio and by cutting office space. They plan to use fewer consultants and limit travel and conferences. It's also planning to increase its use of AI. The department is shifting funding away from underperforming programs and is consolidating the Canada Service Corps and Supports for Student Learning program to lower administrative costs. As to Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, IRCC, they are making targeted adjustments to programs such as the Interim Housing Assistance Program, IHAP, which helps provinces and municipalities and nonprofits support and house asylum claimants. To reduce duplication, the IRCC is transferring compliance inspections for employers who hire temporary foreign workers to the International Mobility Program, from the International Mobility Program to the Department of Employment and Social Development, which already conducts similar inspections. That said, this program has a greatly reduced track record in recent years of actually following through on on-site inspections with employers. For its student work placement program, the federal government is planning to set aside $635.2 million over 3 years, starting in 2026-2027, for 55,000 work-integrated learning opportunities, basically skills training and short-term job placements for post-secondary students. It's also proposing $594.7 million over 2 years toward the Canada Summer Jobs Program, which is an initiative it began exploring a few years ago, and it says will support 100,000 jobs for youth next summer. Among more targeted proposals is the Youth Climate Corps, a paid skills training program for young people in which they will be trained to quickly respond to climate emergencies, support recovery, and strengthen resilience in communities across the country. This program allocates $40 million over the next 2 years to Employment and Social Development Canada, though it's not clear how many young people will be able to benefit from it based on just the budget documents. Now, the government says it's going to also allocate $307.9 million over the next 2 years to a youth employment and skills strategy. Now, this funding goes towards jobs, training, and other supports starting in the 2026-2027 calendar year, including mentorship, transit, and mental health counseling. That portion allocates $75 million over 3 years to expand union-based Red Seal skills training, a list of designated trades that includes things like carpentry, heavy equipment operation, iron workers, machinists, and plumbers. So, one of the key features to this year's budget is the armed forces. Budget 2025 sets out the most substantial defense investment in decades. It commits $81.8 billion over 5 years, starting this year, 2025 to 2026, to rebuild, rearm, modernize the Canadian Armed Forces. This includes $20.4 billion for recruitment, retention, and healthcare supports, $19 billion to maintain existing capabilities and infrastructure, $17.9 billion to expand the military's operational capacity, including logistics, light and armored vehicles, counter-drone and precision strike capabilities, and domestic ammunition production, $10.9 billion for digital and cyber defense infrastructure, and $6.6 billion to launch a new defense industrial strategy that will expand Canada's domestic defense manufacturing base. So let's talk about what this defense industrial strategy is. So the DIA will receive $30.8 billion over 4 years to accelerate procurement, while a new sovereign space launch capability is allocating $182.6 million over 3 years. So not all of the budget involved spending. One of the most notable things in Budget 2025 is the announcement of an immigration levels plan with admission targets of about 380,000 people per year for 3 years, with an increased share of economic migrants, 64% in total. The budget also calls for temporary resident admissions by almost half by 2026, going from 673,650 temporary foreign workers and international students to just 385,000, while taking into consideration industries impacted by tariffs and the unique needs of rural and remote communities. The budget calls for the transition of 33,000 work permit holders to permanent residency, which will cost about $19.4 million over 3 years, in part to offset fee revenues for processing. Canada is also planning to invest $382.9 million over 5 years to establish the new workforce alliances that unite employers and unions and industry associations to coordinate public and private skills investments. This includes the Workforce Innovation Fund to support local and sector-specific projects that strengthen recruitment and retention. There will also be $50 million over 5 years to develop a digital job matching tool and launching a national online training platform partnership in partnership with the private sector. The government also plans to introduce temporary flexibilities to the EI work sharing program, similar to the ones that were introduced during the pandemic, to help employers work reduced hours instead of having to face layoffs. So if an employer is running a factory and they need to reduce people from 40 hours to 25, then perhaps employment insurance can make up the missing hours. To help employers work reduced hours instead of facing layoffs, this will cost $370 million over 5 years. Additionally, it provides $3.7 billion over 3 years for enhanced EI income supports to aid workers impacted by economic uncertainties and trade disruptions. So, already in October of 2025, a month ago, Budget 2025 proposed $97 million over 5 years, starting in 2026, to establish the Foreign Credential Recognition Action Fund. Employment and Social Development Canada is going to work with the provinces and territories to improve the fairness, transparency, timeliness, and consistency of foreign credential recognition, with a focus on the two sectors, health and construction. With a new Prime Minister in power this year and rising tensions with the United States, this year's budget includes far more than previous versions, but it's still a good look at the cumulative change that we can expect in the year to come. While the federal government puts an extremely positive spin on the budget, the changes will be extremely hard for many public servants and the workers who continue to provide the services as new forms of technology are adopted and workloads increase. The benefit of reviewing this information is that it helps us better inform employers, guide those in career transition, and see the changes before they're enacted. If you haven't yet registered for this year's Labour Market Year in Review workshops, they're taking place respectively in British Columbia on November 28th and December 1st, and in Ontario on December 5th and December 8th. I just want to let you know that registration closes next week on November 28th. So if you haven't yet registered, please get your registration in. In British Columbia, go to labormarketonline.com/LMI workshop. For Ontario, go to OntarioLaborMarketOnline.org/LMI workshop. Thank you so much for joining us. Please click the like or subscribe button in your platform. Search for Motivating Mondays wherever you download podcasts. We'd also love it if you could subscribe or rate our YouTube channel and or this podcast. Now, we do these sessions live and for free every Monday morning on Microsoft Teams with job developers from across Canada. It'd be so great if you could join us. Just go to jobdevelopment.org to learn more. If you have any questions, you can send me an email directly, cstcyr@labormarketsolutions.ca. I know I've gone through a ton of information today. If you want to actually see all of the specific information, go to jobdevelopment.org, and click on the Job Development Pulse, the JD Pulse tab. And today's Job Development Pulse is there. It has all of this information. Thank you so much for your time, and have an amazing week.